My recent video on the Mashal Khan lynching generated a lot of views, certainly the most of any video I've made this year, over 9,000 so far. There have been many comments and far more likes and dislikes, which I assume means people are agreeing with what I'm saying. That's good. That's good that there are like-minded people out there who can appreciate that this was an appalling case. But I want to touch on something that goes a little bit deeper than what happened at the University of Mardan, and that is Pakistan's attitude to blasphemy. Now, before I continue with this, I want to make a very, very important disclaimer. And I want to say this in the video because YouTube is going to disable annotation soon, so it'll be difficult to do that afterwards. Pakistan's a big country, population-wise, 180 million people roughly. I would never, ever, ever dream of generalizing or stigmatizing an entire nationality. So I know there are many good Pakistani people who are open-minded and who recognize the things their country needs to do to move forward. And the extreme conservative Islamist theocracy isn't the whole face of Pakistan. I also understand that. Nevertheless, it's a very dominant factor of Pakistani life. And this is very, very important. Why? Because Pakistan's an important geopolitical player. It's certainly not a superpower, and it's not a developed country, but it is a relatively powerful country. It's a large military, it's a nuclear state, and geopolitically, I would argue, it is certainly an important country. So when you have a very large proportion of the population who genuinely believe in the year 2017 that people should be put to death for blasphemy, that I find frankly rather sinister. Now, most people that I've been seeing online have condemned the lynching. Most. Some have tried to condone it. Some have suggested it's a conspiracy theory. Most have condemned it. However, a lot of that condemnation has come with a caveat, and this is, I find, rather disturbing. And it usually goes along these lines. This was awful. He shouldn't have been lynched. If he was guilty of blasphemy, he should be found guilty in a court of law and then punished. In other words, the issue for these conservative Pakistanis is not that he was killed for blasphemy, it's that it was extrajudicial, that was all. In other words, if he had been charged with blasphemy, and if he had been found guilty, they would be absolutely fine with him being publicly executed. This young guy apparently identified as a humanist, and there was sad footage of his dormitory, which was full of philosophy, and he sounds like he was an intelligent and compassionate young man, murdered by a bunch of extremist cards. There has certainly been a response to this. 45 arrests have been made, but apparently the authorities, in the day after his murder, opened up investigations for blasphemy on campus. So I'm going to come out and say it. I believe that the only way Pakistan has any chance of changing is to get rid of its blasphemy logic, full stop. And I know, like I said in the previous video, that is very difficult because there is a very strong, religiously conservative base. But in my opinion, this is why Pakistan is a failed state. Yes, there are other problems like corruption. Yes, there are the problems that many developing countries face with endemic poverty and access to education, and certainly natural disasters is a serious problem in Pakistan. All those things are problems. But in my opinion, this ultra-conservative religious mindset that Islam cannot be criticized, that to me is what's holding Pakistan back. And what is unfortunate about this is that the people who advocate it aren't necessarily rural, uneducated people. In many cases, these are lawyers, lecturers, students themselves, educated people. And Pakistan is the embodiment of where regressive Islam is in the world today. And so long as this situation persists, it is simply phony to insist that Islam is a religion of tolerance. That's not tolerance. Not when there is no freedom of expression. Not when the penalty for offending a religion is to be put to death. That says to me this is a very regressive religion. And I haven't even touched on the endemic persecution of minorities in Pakistan, of Christians, of Ahmadis, of Sufis. It's a failed state because this situation, this social acceptance of religious extremism has taken hold. And I'm not talking about ISIS or the Pakistani Taliban or Lashkar-e-Taiba or any designated terrorist organizations. I'm talking about mainstream society here. That's what's so disturbing about this. Now, I said at the start of the video, I don't believe in generalizing entire nations, and I stand by that. There are Pakistanis who know this is a problem. There are Pakistanis who are secular minded, who are liberal minded, who um, understand that these blasphemy laws are holding their country back. But this culture of fear, this culture of these laws being used to silence people, means that even those who know it's a problem can hardly speak out and say so. That's why I'm making this video. Because I know the chances of me being targeted are very, very, very low. If I was in Pakistan, I sure as hell wouldn't be making this video. Because as much as I believe in standing up for my conviction, I'm not that brave. And I don't want to be targeted by a lynch mob. Mashal Khan paid the price for his courage. But his courage stands as a bright light in contrast to the cards who murdered him. And it's yet another testament of the sickness of the human mind, where especially when it's in a mob mentality. It's sad, it's depressing, and it's infuriating. And I don't see any signs that Pakistan is going to change anytime soon. And it isn't just Pakistan. You can find examples in Islamic countries all over the world. I think Pakistan is one of the worst examples, but it's not unique. Even Malaysia and Indonesia, which were traditionally seen as relatively moderate, are starting to show signs of increasing theocracy. This, to me, is very unsettling. You know, outsiders may not be able to change Pakistan, but at the very, very least, we need to absolutely insist that this mentality is not tolerated in secular societies. That's why I feel it is such a problem that there are legislators in both Canada and Australia who are trying to make legislation to make it illegal to criticize Islam, and it's under the guise of Islamophobia, so-called Islamophobia. Where there is hate crime against Muslims, that can be covered under general hate crime legislation, but to make special legislation protecting Muslims, I think that's a very problematic move. Why? Because it then creates a situation where Islam is put above criticism. Its proponents deny that is what's going to happen, but I believe it's a sick situation that democracies like Canada would allow such legislation, supposedly under tolerance, when in a country like Pakistan people can be killed. It's estimated, one study suggested as many as 65 people have died since 1990, murdered on charges of blasphemy. That's not even including those who have been judicially executed. 65 people murdered. This case has generated particular attention because of its brutality, because it was filmed, but it's not unique. So I'm aware that what I'm saying here is going to offend a lot of Pakistani people. But there will be other Pakistanis who absolutely agree with what I'm saying, and they know that these things need to be said. And a final point regarding generally talking about other countries, I'm a staunch believer that the internet is borderless, at least it should be. So I don't take the view, oh, I can't talk about that because it's another country. I'm trying to give a voice to people who may not be in a position to say these things. That's all. And this blasphemy mindset is holding Pakistan back. I'm adamant about that. If I ever go to Pakistan, of course I will be very careful not to commit blasphemy. But this is the thing, it isn't even about people who have committed blasphemy, i.e., questioned Islam. A rumour is enough to get someone killed. And that is appalling. It's not unique. I would argue it's a similar situation in Thailand with the Des Majest hysteria, which I've been very outspoken on. But any legislation that enables a mob mentality to develop needs to be scrutinised. Um, if Pakistan abolished these laws, and I know they're not going to, but if they did, certainly the Conservatives would be up in arms about it. But I think it's the only way Pakistan can go forward. It's the only way. So, when Pakistani nationals complain about the outside world having a negative image, or they complain about pretty much anything, whether it be India or the United States or Britain, when they complain about outsiders, I would suggest that they have a long, hard look at themselves.